morning, sir. हाँ, लाइट चली गई क्या वहाँ पे? अच्छा, तो मेरी आवाज आती है? मैं गुड मॉर्निंग बोल रहा था उन्हें तो। ठीक है। हेलो।
Morning to all the dignitaries and participants in the 5-day faculty development program on opportunities and challenges for electric vehicle in the automotive, sponsored by AICT Training and Learning Academy and organized by National Institute of Technology, Srinagar. With the blessing of Almighty, to begin with the program, I Ashish Singh, on behalf of organizing team, welcome our honorable chief guest, Professor Rakesh Sehgal, Director NIT Srinagar, guest of honor, Professor C.S. Sankar Ram, Department of Engineering Design, IIT Madras, Professor Nazir Ahmed Sheikh, Head of Department, Mechanical Engineering, NIT Srinagar, Professor Mohammad Abid Bazaz, Head of Department, Electrical Engineering, NIT Srinagar, all respected deans, faculties, and lastly, Dr. Harveer Singh Pali, FDP Coordinator for Virtual Lamp Lighting and Saraswati Vandana.
Ashish, no issue.
There is some technical issues while playing the Saraswati Vandana. So let us continue further. And I would like to welcome Dr. H.S. Pali, FDP coordinator, for the welcome address.
Good morning to all. Ashish, my screen is visible?
Yes, sir.
So, good morning, my dear participants. I, Dr. Harveer Singh Pali, heartily welcome all the participants. One second, मेरे
Sir, good morning.
Good morning, sir. 1 second, I have some technical issue on my side also. Yes, no issue. Now I will start. So, Ashish, my screen is visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay. Good morning, one and all. I, Dr. Harveer Singh Pali, warmly welcome of all dignitaries, dear participants, faculty member from each and every part of the India present over here. I am highly thankful on behalf of the NIT Srinagar and on my personal behalf to join and register in this FDP. So thank you all. Now I welcome our Honorable Director Professor Rakesh Saigal, Chief Guest of the session. He is the constant source of inspiration and provide us all possible supports for academic and professional activities. Sir, due to your encouragement, we are doing well. In the present FDP, we have the 200 faculty participants throughout the India. So on this note, I heartily welcome to all head of the department, all heads and all deans, respected professors and faculty members of the NIT Srinagar. And I feel honored to introduce Professor C.S. Shankar Ram, Professor, Department of Engineering Design, and Professor Shankar Ram is our guest of honor today's inaugural session. He joined the NIT. He joined the IIT Chennai in July 2013, and became a professor in July 2018. He published more than 58 international journal papers and more than 18 international conference papers. He published the paper in 3 domains: automotive engineering, transport engineering, and other category. He has the professional member of the ASME, American Society of Mechanical Engineers, and associate member of the SAE, Society of Automotive Engineers, India and USA from 2006. He is the member of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. So I am highly delighted that the Professor Shankar Ram is expert speaker of our first session, as well as the guest of honor of this FDP. Now about the FDP. Present FDP is based on the opportunity and challenges for the electric vehicles in the automotive. Electric vehicles is the prominent solution of the fuel crisis and environmental pollution for the global transport sector. This program is designed to provide the state-of-art trends and advancement of the electric vehicles. It will enable to promote the industry and institute collaboration by working of the current research problems. So the industry experts are the resource person with the academicians. The participant will be introduced the fundamental of electric vehicles, components such as the battery, drives, controllers used in the electric vehicles, and develop the understanding of how to optimize the techniques to improve the features of the EVs. The participant will be trained in order to have in-depth insight into the domain of the automobile and expose them to feasibility of the source and the future scope of the electric vehicles. The program is so nicely designed that it will be cover all basics and fundamental until at the advanced level. So the main topic covered introduction of about the electric vehicles, research opportunities in electric vehicle technology, different charging standard and charging infrastructure, electric vehicle dynamics and hybrid electric vehicles, battery thermal management, recent electric vehicle technologies, testing of the battery, e-motors, inverters, and selection of motors and its control in the electric vehicle, electric motor technology for the electric vehicles and hybrid electric vehicles. So as well as we have seen the what are the future opportunities in the electric vehicle in research point of view. This is our program schedule. In the first day, we have the Professor C.S. Sankaram, IIT Madras. And after this session, one is common inaugural that is organized by the AICT, Atal Academy. The link is already shared with the participant. So you can join that link for the common inaugural at 11. And in second half, we have the two sessions. At one session is from 2 p.m. and another is the 3:30 p.m. Both from the T.K. Vera and Dr. Ashish Bore from NIT Durgapur. In the second day, we have the Honorable Professor B.K. Panigrahi from IIT Delhi. And second session is the Dr. Fidbi Johannes Yogas from the Sultanate of Oman. And second day, last session is the industry person, industry expert is there, Engineer Rakesh Tyagi from AVL India Private Limited. Third day, we have very interesting and insightful as well as you can say motivational talk from the Professor Navneet Arora from IIT Roorkee. And in second session, we have the Dr. Neeraj Gupta from NIT Srinagar. Same day, the last session by the Dr. Dinesh Balasubramaniam, Keon University, Thailand. On the fourth day, we have first session, Dr. A.B. Ravi Teja from IIT Ropar. And second session is Honorable Professor Naveen Kumar from Delhi Technical University. And last session from the another industry expert, Engineer Avinash Kumar Singh, founders and CEO of the DI Group. Last day, we have the first session, Dr. Gaurav Kumar, IIIT Bhagalpur. And second session is Dr. Arun Kumar, MNIT Jaipur. And in this day, we have last session for the online exam. The exam is based on our expert lectures during the FDP. So after this FDP, these are the expected outcome. The participant will get in-depth understanding of the EV systems, list out the research activities on the electric vehicles, and understand what is the battery management, power charging infrastructure, and figure out the hybrid vehicles, electric hybrid vehicles potential and avenues for the future. and as well as we can understand or analyze the vehicle dynamics and control of the electric vehicle. So today's expert is based on, our lecture is based on the vehicle dynamics. We are in a fortunate Professor C.S. Sankaram from the IIT Chennai. They will deliver in-depth knowledge vehicle dynamics for the electric vehicles. One announcement and you can say suggestion: the certificate of the participant will be issued on the successful completion of the FDP as per the Atal FDP guidelines. So there are the two major guidelines, two major things are there. We can share. One is the you have to maintain the more than 80% attendance. You have to attend all the sessions, and after this, at the end of end day and final day, at the end session, we have the one online exam, and you have to score more than 60% marks. Then your certificate will be issued from the Atal portal. So thank you for joining. Please learn, extract more, and ask your queries and doubts from our eminent speakers. So thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to welcome Professor Nazir Ahmed Sheikh, FDP veteran and Head of Department Mechanical Engineering, NIT Srinagar, for his address to the participants.
Respected Chief Guest and Director NIT Srinagar, Professor Dr. Rakesh Sehgal. Respected guest of the session, Dr. Shankar Rao, Dr. H.S. Pali, other dignitaries and participants. This is my privilege to present the short-term course on electrical vehicles technology development involving opportunities and challenges. All people know that the mineral fuels are very shortly coming to an end. Moreover, the cost of the fuels is going so high that nowadays we have the petrol liter in India 104 rupees, and the graph is going constantly high. I expect that near future 1 liter of petrol may be 500 rupees. Plus the application of these mineral fuels in other fields of engineering like polymer technology, plastics, and other engineering products is very huge. And in near future, we may be totally short of, number one, the availability of these fuels, and plus the application field will be so high that their cost will be very high. Therefore, the people in engineering and technology have felt in advance the crisis and the problems what mankind is going to face in future. Therefore, the only option currently was to go for electrical powered vehicles, electrically powered vehicles. And there is huge source of electrical energy available going to be in future, that is nuclear technology. From nuclear technology, we are going to run, with the grace of God, thousands of years in future. And if we are able to trap this energy in terms of batteries and then use this energy for locomotives and automotives is going to solve the problem of mankind. I will not take much time. I will briefly present my department, which is very rich in faculty, in facilities, and in case of research, we have about 23 highly qualified faculty members, which are qualified from foreign universities, from IITs, and from reputed institutions from India. We have research facilities, especially one of the state-of-the-art and high-end research facilities in the field of tribology, in the field of fatigue research, structural dynamics, computational analysis, and other fields. So we expect that our department is going to be a lot of help in providing the resource for this course. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your knowledgeable words. Now, I'd like to welcome FDP Chief Patron, our Honorable Director, Professor Rakesh Sehgal, sir, to address the audience with his valuable words.
Sound.
Sir, good morning, sir. Your mic is mute, sir.
Sir, kindly mute and unmute. Or go into which is going high-tech fibers must. See. Huh? Why? Boss, you reach for me, right? Inshallah, but you reach करती. So, सही से okay. Okay. High-tech नहीं आ रहा. क्या कर? नहीं करना है.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Came.
It's okay. It's okay now. Can
Yes,
you
sir.
hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Professor C.S. Shankar Ram, guest of honor and expert for today's morning session. Professor Sheikh Nazir, head of the Mechanical Engineering Department. Deans and head of the departments who have joined this FDP. The coordinator, Dr. Harveer Singh Pali, and co-coordinator, Dr. Neeraj Gupta. Participants from all over India. A very good morning to all of you, and I, on behalf of NIT Srinagar, extend a very hearty and formal welcome to all of you. It is really nice that NIT Srinagar, some faculty members, they have taken up this assignment to train some of our colleagues who are serving in other institutions across India. They have in fact selected a very important topic, opportunities and challenges for electric vehicles in automotive sector. And Professor C.S. Shankar Ram is expert in this area. I remember as a student when I was, a third year student at Annamalai University, mechanical engineering, we used to study Newton and Steels for automotive technology or automobile engineering. That used to be a very good book. It used to wonderfully explain different types of, drives, the gearboxes, and, other things related to automotives. And IIT Madras, in fact, has taken a lead in the automotive technology. In fact, they have a very good lab. They have very good infrastructure. I remember there are few good books which have been, given to the academic world by the professors of IIT Madras. And we happen to read, so we happen to use some of these books for our teaching. In my 33 years of teaching career and, the administrative career, I have taught this subject, automotive technology, a few times. And as now we are progressing towards the hybrid and then finally the totally electric vehicles, it really poses many challenges to all of us. Of course, it will simplify many things which otherwise we experience in the engine technology, in the IC engine technology. One major among that is the unbalanced forces, which because of the reciprocating masses, which cannot be totally balanced. As a mechanical engineering teachers, all of us know rotating masses, of course, they can be balanced, but reciprocating masses cannot be completely balanced. So that challenge will not come in the electric vehicles because there will be no reciprocating parts. So the dynamics, that part is completely, much simplified in electric vehicles. But then it has its own challenges. How long a battery can sustain, for how many kilometers, if we charge our batteries, for how long it will come, where we have the charging stations, how do we manage that charging infrastructure, and what we do ultimately, how do we recycle the batteries which will be used for these vehicles, because it's a huge storage. Last time when I was visiting some places in Himachal, I saw in Himachal, in fact, in Shimla, the government has launched completely electric vehicles for the local transportation. And for, incidentally, it was the back of the vehicle was opened and I saw a huge, chunk of the batteries, electric batteries. And it suddenly, struck me, what will happen, when these batteries, they will become redundant. How to dispose them of, how to recycle them. That is also a big challenge. How to deal with this problem. That is also a big challenge. It's not, now the technology is so advanced, we can think of anything and then we can produce that, we can even miniaturize that and we can use it for our purpose. We have very efficient batteries. Now we have maintenance-free batteries for our cars, which will come for 3 years, 4 years. We don't need to do anything. Once a while, after 1 year, maybe we can check the water level inside. Nothing else, nothing more is required. But then there are other challenges. I am sure that this FDP will discuss various aspects and various challenges and will try to find out some solutions, some tangible solutions to some of the problems. Of course, I can understand in 5 days FDP, we cannot do miracles. We cannot come out with the research like kind of things. But when 200 plus people will be together, will be discussing the things, and more than 10 experts will be deliberating on different topics related to the challenges and opportunities related to the electric vehicles in automotive sector, definitely, if not many, at least 1 or 2 aspects could be touched and some solution to those aspects can be found. And probably that kind of solution can be then shared with the industry, or it can be further taken as a research problem. Because, such courses will not only give knowledge, but they will also give a spark to some of the prospective PhD scholars, who will get some idea, who will catch some idea, and then they will proceed further in that direction. A small idea can lead to a PhD. That is how, and that will be a real kind of PhD. It will not be only the academic kind of thesis production. It should really contribute something to the automotive sector in electric vehicles. So, with these words, and I would like to inform all the participants, NIT Srinagar is a wonderful institution. Had not been this, the COVID problem, we would have felt happy to host our participants and our experts, in person. And I'm sure that this pandemic will be over very soon. And next time when we organize any of such, program, then we would like to host all our experts and our participants on campus. It's a big institution. It's an old institution, started in 1960 under second five-year plan. This is probably the third REC in the country. And now we offer 8 UG programs in engineering. We offer 15 PG programs, 11 in engineering, and 4 in MSc Physics, MSc Chemistry, MSc Tide, MBA, and MBA program. We also offer doctoral and postdoctoral program in all areas. At present, our student strength on campus is around 3,000, 3,400, close to that. And, it's a small campus. It's a beautiful campus, 67-acre total area. We are situated at the bank of the Dal Lake. Very beautiful, very prime location, adjacent to the world famous Hazrat Bal Shrine, which is, famous spot. It's a famous religious place, all of us know. So, with these words, I once again welcome all the experts and all the participants, and I would like to congratulate the mechanical engineering department, head of the mechanical engineering department, and especially the organizers who have taken lead to organize an FDP of such an important topic. So with these words, I once again welcome you all, and all my best wishes for the successful culmination of this important FDP. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your motivational and insightful words and your encouragement. Thank you, sir. Now I would like to invite our guest of honor and our expert of the first session to deliver a talk on the vehicle dynamics on the electric vehicle and hybrid vehicles. So please welcome Professor C.S. Shankar Rao, sir, and the session is over to you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning and namaskar. So thank you for your invitation, Dr. Harveer Singh Pali, and good morning to Professor Sehgal and Professor Sheikh Nazir, and all the participants, in this FDP program. So I'm glad to join this set of people, today morning, and share my thoughts on presenting a vehicle dynamics perspective on electric and hybrid electric vehicle powertrain. So I will share my presentation. I hope the screen is visible. No, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's visible.
Okay, great. So let me get started with my presentation. Okay, so I have titled my talk as a vehicle dynamics perspective on electric and hybrid electric powertrain. Of course, I'm a mechanical engineer by training. So I am going to look at this very important topic of what I call as electrified vehicles, which has been growing in focus and also acceptance throughout the world in the recent years from a vehicle level perspective. Before I go into the talk, I want to bring to the attention of all the participants about 2 NPTEL massive open online courses that I offer through the Swayam platform. One is an undergraduate course on control systems, whose information could be found here. And in fact, you can also go to the Swayam platform and search for this course. And incidentally, that course starts today, but people can still register, like depending on their interest. And the second course is a postgraduate level introductory course on automobiles, which I offer at IIT Madras. So it's called Fundamentals of Automotive Systems. So this course is offered as an NPTEL MOOC every January to April, so. So if you are interested to know more about this course, please do visit this website. So, and I acknowledge the help of all my students, research scholars with whom I have worked in the electric vehicle domain and who have helped me to learn this particular field. So thanks to them. And these notes are mainly intended for educational purposes, and have been prepared from various sources. So what are the questions that I will ask during the course of this talk and also answer them? So the first question we will be considering is if we consider any road vehicle powertrain. So what requirements typically are put on or expected, right, out of an automotive powertrain, right? So that is the first question we will be asking ourselves. Then we will look at what factors, like motivate us to consider electrified powertrains. I would be looking at it more from the perspective of vehicle requirements, and the vehicle dynamic requirements. This will be followed by looking at what are the components of a typical electric vehicle and what configurations they can take, electric and hybrids. And finally, we will look at basic dynamics and how it can be utilized to what is called as component sizing of an electrified powertrain, so that we can meet some intended or expected vehicle performance requirements. So let's answer each question one by one, starting with what are the requirements of an automotive powertrain from a vehicle performance perspective. Many times, we encounter that, when we have a vehicle, it goes from, let's say, 0 to, let's say, 60 kilometers per hour, right, in 4 seconds, right? So please excuse my handwriting. I'm writing with a mouse, right? So please excuse if some words appear awkward. So let's say we specify or we encounter that a vehicle goes from 0 to 60 kilometers per hour in 4 seconds. That means that we are specifying, what is the intended acceleration, right, of that. And one can also specify what is the longitudinal or the peak longitudinal speed at which the vehicle should travel. So for example, one may say, I want the vehicle to travel at the maximum longitudinal speed or maximum vehicle speed of 120 kilometers per hour, right? So that way I am putting a number, right, to this requirement. And we can also specify what is called as gradability. So I'm sure all of us would have driven on uphill roads, particularly, if you consider NIT Srinagar, I'm sure, we will have a lot of hilly terrain in and around Srinagar. So then the question becomes, if I have to go up on a upslope, right, with an angle of theta, so what effort should I put in, to climb this slope? And that is quantified by what is called as gradability. So gradability is typically tan of this theta, right, tan of this angle, which I want to climb. Okay, so of course, if we go in depth into this, we'll see that there is what is called starting gradability and continuous gradability. So what is starting gradability and continuous gradability? So if I look at continuous gradability, imagine that we are driving a car on a flat road or a two-wheeler on a flat road, right? And I approach a hilly terrain or a flyover. So I continue to go at the same speed on the flyover or the hilly terrain, right? So then I should put in some more effort or thrust to continue to go at that same speed. So that is what is called continuous gradability requirement. On the other hand, let's say we are stuck in a traffic jam on a flyover, right? Then, we are basically keeping our vehicle stationary on a slope, on an upslope. Then when we need to start once again, right, when the traffic is clear and the vehicles start moving, we have to essentially, go from rest, accelerate, and then also continue to climb on that slope, right? So that is going to take some extra effort from the powertrain. So that is what is called as starting gradability. Okay? So gradability becomes a very important requirement. Okay, and consequently, one needs to look at that particular aspect. One looking at vehicle requirements, right, of a powertrain. And fuel economy and energy efficiency becomes very important in the context of electric vehicles, electrified vehicles. We look at equivalent measures, right? So in case of a pure electric, we talk about range, which essentially implies or gives a quantifiable measure of what distance the vehicle will travel between two successive recharging cycles of its battery. We can also talk about parameters such as miles per gallon of gasoline equivalent. Okay, so which tells us, what is the output from the powertrain, right, in terms of its energy efficiency. So here, choice of the drive cycle becomes important. What is drive cycle? Drive cycle is nothing but plot of speed versus time. And of course, the way we drive depends on the individual and also in the environment or the city in which we drive, right? Or the town in which, because every place is going to have a different drive cycle. Okay. So having looked at the main requirements expected of an electric or automotive powertrain in general, let's define some terms before we get into the configurations of electrified vehicles. So the word powertrain is utilized to refer to what is called as a prime mover. Typically, we are aware or exposed to the internal combustion engine, the petrol engine or the diesel engine. In an electric vehicle, we have a traction motor, which is the prime mover. In a hybrid, we have a combination of internal combustion engine and electric motor that drives the vehicle. So the powertrain includes the prime mover and also what is called as a drive line that finally transmits the energy from the prime mover to the wheels. The drive line is consisting of all the components from the prime mover output to the wheels. So if you consider the entire powertrain and we, let's say, remove the prime mover from the powertrain, right? Whatever is left behind is the drive. So this may include the transmission or the gearbox, let's say some other shafts like propeller shafts, we can have a differential, right? Or a final drive unit. And then the driven wheels and all those constitute the drive. And the word transmission is typically used to refer to the primary gearbox, like which we use in an automobile. So you can see that transmission is a part of the drive. Okay, so these are the three broad terms we will be using in this particular talk. So if you look at the simple block diagram schematic, right, of the energy flow in a powertrain, we can immediately see that we have a prime mover, and as we discussed, it can be an internal combustion engine or an electric motor or a combination of both. That is going to deliver some torque at speed, and which is going to be transmitted to a transmission, and then from the transmission we get a torque at a particular angular speed, which is then transmitted to the wheels, and that generates a traction force at the tire rod interface, and the vehicle is propelled at some speed v. Okay, so this is the generic schematic, right, or illustrating the flow of information, right, in a typical automotive powertrain. Now, with respect to this layout, we ask ourselves some specific questions, right? So how do we get the specifications of the internal combustion engine and the motor, right? So suppose we are given some performance specifications like what we asked as some questions before, right? So in terms of maximum acceleration, maximum speed, gradability, and so on. If we are given those specifications, how do we convert those specifications into some ratings of the internal combustion engine on the motor? Then we also ask ourselves the question, how do we calculate the transmission ratio, of gears that are used in the powertrain? So these are some relevant questions to ask ourselves. So having established some broad questions, now let's look at some details of electrified vehicles before we go into some dynamic analysis. So at a very broad level, depending on the context of this particular program and talk, we can classify the automotive powertrain as the traditional or the conventional internal combustion engine powertrain. We can also have electric powertrains, which are pure electric. Like can be just an electric motor driven by a battery or an electric vehicle with what's called range extender. We'll be looking at them shortly. Can also be a hybrid electric vehicle. In a hybrid electric vehicle, we have an engine and a motor which can essentially drive the vehicle, right? It can act as energy sources. So we can have different configurations. We'll be looking at all these shortly. Okay. Yeah, we have series hybrids, parallel hybrids, and series parallel hybrids. Okay. Now, in fact, if we look at the historical development of electric vehicles, we would see that electric vehicles were, in fact, invented in the same timeline as IC engine powered vehicles, or in fact, a little bit before them also. Okay, depending on our source. It's just that the internal combustion engine became very popular due to various reasons, and the environment was not suitable, for the rapid development and acceptance of electrified vehicles. So now we, for the past 2 or 3 decades, you can see that hybrids and electrics have been making making a comeback of sorts, right, in the automotive domain. And currently, due to various reasons, they are being, have been gaining more traction and acceptance, and they are going to become mainstream maybe within a few years, right? So let's look at some technological issues with IC engine powertrain, which an electric motor can address. Okay, so all of us are aware of environmental reasons. Of course, one should take a very balanced view of these points. Okay, because in a pure electric, yes, we may not have tailpipe emissions, but it also depends on how the energy that is charging the battery is obtained. Okay, so we need to look at what are called as well-to-wheel efficiencies and emissions, right, in order to do a very balanced study. And we also have a shortage of fossil fuel in India, right? So as all of us know, we import our crude oil supplies, right? So the question is, with the availability of fuel, being a constant question, right? The prices are also important, and we are also having an increasing number of road vehicles operating on road. So all these have motivated us to look at electric vehicles as a very serious option, right, as far as practical usage is concerned. And if you look at an IC engine powertrain, its efficiency is pretty low when compared to electric vehicle powertrains. Okay, so that is another reason which also motivates us to look at it. And importantly, from the perspective of this particular talk, right? Since we are having a conversation as engineers, like if you look at in the context of vehicles, when we essentially look at the expectation, right, of a powertrain or a drive line, right? So in terms of vehicle drive requirements, if we plot the tractive force expected from a powertrain, this is the longitudinal speed of the vehicle, we tend to have what is called as an ideal traction hyperbola. Okay, so what is the motivation? See, all of us know that like the power output is going to be torque multiplied by angular speed or force multiplied by longitudinal or linear speed, right? So now, by and large, we want to go for a constant power output powertrain. Okay, so consequently, the force, right, can be written as P by V. So immediately we can see that the force output from the powertrain is inversely related to the speed, and if power is constant, we are going to have a hyperbolic relationship between Fn. So what we have plotted here is a curve between Fn. So for a constant power output, we can see that the curve relating the force F and the speed V will be in the shape of a hyperbola, and that is what is called ideal traction hyperbola. And it so happens that the force speed characteristics of an IC engine is nowhere near the shape of a hyperbola. Okay, it is like this. And another issue is that like the IC engine also hardly delivers any torque at low speeds, at its starting speed. So that is why, you know, like I'm sure all of us, when we learned how to drive a car, right, one of the most important steps that we would have learned would be to figure out how to move a car from rest, right? We use a clutch to essentially move the car from rest, right? And that's a skill we need to acquire. The technical reason being this, right? So the engine cannot sustain or provide enough torque, okay, at low speeds or close to zero speeds, okay. So what do? You know, like we use a multi-speed gearbox in an IC engine-driven powertrain to address this issue. So what we do is that like we use a first gear to convert this shape into this shape, okay. So the gear ratio is high, so we increase the force and narrow down the speed range. So it becomes like this, and then like second gear, third gear, and so on. So when we are operating the vehicle, we will see that we will be going on this path, okay, and it is designed so that like we are as close to the ideal traction hyperbola is concerned. But then we can see that due to the characteristic of the engine, after some time, we fall away from the ideal traction hyperbola, right? And I'm sure all of us would have experienced it while we are driving, right? So when we start from the first gear, after some time, we will see that, oh, the engine starts dragging. That means the gap between the ideal traction hyperbola and this curve is increasing. Then what we do, we switch to the second gear. Then we start going on this curve. So we try to remain as close as possible to the ideal traction. And then we switch to this third gear, you know, like once we start falling away from the hyperbola and so on. Okay. So like this, we keep on changing. Okay. So this is the science behind the multi-speed gearbox and how we switch gears, right, as we drive the vehicle. Okay, so, but of course, you can always see that there is going to be some gap between the ideal traction hyperbola and what is actually obtained, you know, like between the powertrain and the ideal traction hyperbola, right? So that is always going to be a challenge, right? So, but that's how the traditional IC engine powertrain operates. With an electric motor, this issue can be addressed. In fact, you would have seen that, you know, like in a electric car, you know, we can use one gear, you know, like, so why is that, you know, like what attribute or what characteristic of an electric motor facilitates that? So we will look at that when we come to electric motor or electric powertrain sizing, okay, shortly. But please keep this in mind, okay, like please keep the concepts of ideal traction hyperbola and what is an ideal powertrain. Okay, an ideal powertrain is one which provides a constant power output irrespective of the speed of the vehicle. Consequently, the force output from the powertrain should be inversely proportional to the speed, and there should be a hyperbolic relationship between the force and the speed. Okay, so that's an expectation. So with this in mind, let's look at various configurations of electric vehicles. Okay, I'm going to essentially explain these configuration using simple schematics. So first, let's look at a pure electric vehicle. So we have a battery. So the battery it provides energy to the electric motor, or what is called as a traction motor. And the electric motor is connected to a transmission, and through the transmission, it provides energy to the driven wheels. Okay. So this is a pure electric vehicle. So the main advantage is that there is no tailpipe emission. Okay, so that's very important. So we don't see any emissions coming out from the vehicle per se. And due to the characteristics of the electric motor, the starting torque at 0 speed and low speeds are pretty high. And so we can have faster acceleration with an electric vehicle. However, there are issues pertaining to the range of the vehicle with a pure electric mode, and this is being constantly addressed. If you look at recent trends, like all automotive manufacturers are getting into the electric vehicle business, and they are figuring out ways to improve the range, right, of their vehicle. Charging times are also decreasing, right? Battery life and cost remains a question, right? So because compared to the life of an automobile, the battery life is smaller, right? So essentially, a question becomes, like we have to factor that one in, like when we are looking at electric vehicle. So now, please look at what changed from the previous configuration to this configuration. So you can immediately realize that I just added these two components, okay? And that brings us to an electric vehicle with a range extender. So what is this range extender? So in an electric vehicle, suppose if you are driving a vehicle and the battery gets discharged, we stop, and then, we may get stuck, and we need to find a place to charge our battery, and also like ensure that we spend sufficient time charging the battery. On the other hand, like we cannot afford, let's say, a few hours of charging time, right? What we do is that, like, we use a range extender where a small engine is used and it drives a generator and it charges the battery as the vehicle is traveling. Okay, so yes, in this configuration, the engine is not used to drive the wheels. Okay, we should realize that it is rather used to charge the battery as the vehicle is in operation. Okay, so but the engine is operated at its efficient points so that the tailpipe emission, although present, is minimized. Okay, and the size of the engine is also consequently lower because its only function is to charge the battery. Okay, so compared to a pure EV, it becomes a little bit more complex and it is costlier. But then, like there is a benefit, right? Because the battery can be charged while the vehicle is in operation. So that is the electric vehicle with range extender. So now if you go to hybrid, so we can immediately observe that the difference between the previous figure and this figure is this connection, right? So in the previous figure, in the electric vehicle with range extender, the engine through a generator just charges the battery. In a series hybrid electric vehicle, the generator can charge the battery, and it can also drive the electric motor, okay, directly. So the engine can drive the vehicle through the generator, through the electric motor, through the transmission, and transmit energy to the wheels. Okay, so that's why it's called as a series hybrid electric vehicle, because the engine and the electric motor are in a series connection, right? So the engine can do two roles. It can drive the wheels, or it can charge the battery, or it can do both. The electric motor can also independently take energy from the battery and drive the wheels, or it can take energy from the generator and drive the wheels. Okay, so essentially, it is a very simple configuration of all the hybrid vehicle configurations. But the issue is that, like, typically this electric motor is the only source for driving the wheels directly. So consequently, the rating of the traction motor is higher compared to other hybrid configurations. Okay, so that should be kept in mind. So now moving on to parallel HEV or parallel hybrid electric vehicle, immediately we can see that the engine and the traction motor are now in parallel, right? So consequently, both can independently drive the wheels, okay? And there is no interconnection between the two till they come to this mechanical coupler, okay? So the engine can drive the wheels, the electric motor can drive the wheels, both can do separately or both can combine and then give the output to the wheels, okay? So obviously, it requires a more complex controller to essentially operate this parallel hybrid. So the next configuration is a series parallel hybrid. So the main difference between the previous figure and this one is this, right? Now the engine can also charge the battery through a generator. Okay, that's why it's called as a series parallel hybrid. Okay, so it sort of combines the attributes of both series hybrid and parallel hybrid. Okay, so the engine can drive the wheels, the electric motor can drive the wheels, both can drive the wheels through the mechanical coupler at the same time, and also the engine can recharge the battery through the generator. Okay, so that is also possible. Okay, so that is the series parallel hybrid electric vehicle configuration. Okay, so now what we have done is that we have asked ourselves some question regarding the expectations of an automotive powertrain. We have also looked at various configurations, right, of electrified powertrains. So now we will spend some time in looking at what a powertrain needs to overcome, such that we figure out how we can calculate the tractive effort required from a powertrain. Okay, so let's spend some time to learn that. Okay, so I'm just going to use very simple mechanics to explain this. Okay, so let me explain this free body diagram which I have drawn here. So let us say we consider a vehicle which is traveling uphill, okay, on a gradient theta x. Okay, the weight of the vehicle is W. Okay, so what is going to happen is that due to this grade, there is going to be a component W sine theta s down the grade, right, which the powertrain needs to overcome, and that W sine theta s is what is called grade resistance. Okay, so grade resistance is mg sine theta s or W sine theta s. Okay, so that is the force or the component of the vehicle weight which the powertrain needs to overcome so that the vehicle can move up, right? So let us say the vehicle is moving at an acceleration A, and it has what is called as a wheelbase of L. Okay, the wheelbase capital L is nothing but the distance between the front wheel center and the rear wheel center. Okay, so that is what is called wheelbase. So let us say this is the center of gravity of the vehicle, and we assume that that center of gravity is at a distance of L1 from the front wheel center and L2 from the rear wheel center. So consequently, L1 plus L2 is equal to capital L, okay, which is the wheelbase. And let us also assume that the height of the center of gravity from the ground is some h. Okay, so h is the height of the center of gravity from the ground level. Okay, so now let's look at the other terms which I have drawn. Which I have drawn on this figure. So WF and WR indicate the normal loads, okay, at the front and the rear wheel, respectively. So you have the vehicle. Obviously, there's going to be some normal load at the front and the rear wheels. Okay, they are indicated by WF and WR. And let's say the point of contact of the front wheel and tire, although it's a contact area, we will take a point which is A, which is the center point of contact at the front tire road interface, and let's say this point is some B, okay, which is at the rear tire road interface. Okay, and as we travel on the road, we are going to experience some aerodynamic drag. Let's lump the aerodynamic drag using some force RA, and RA indicates the net, okay, resultant aerodynamic drag that is acting on the vehicle. Okay, and RRF and RRR, which we can see here, are what are called as rolling resistance forces. So what are these rolling resistance forces? Like if you consider a typical road vehicle, right, we'll have a pneumatic tire. And when the pneumatic tire operates on the road, it is going to deform. And the pneumatic tire is made out of a viscoelastic material. And that has what is called as hysteresis loss. So consequently, when the vehicle is operated, due to energy loss due to hysteresis, there is going to be some energy dissipation, okay, which is then quantified at the vehicle level using what is called the rolling resistance. Okay, so you can see this term here. This is also another force which the powertrain needs to overcome. So the rolling resistance force is the sum of the rolling resistance force at the front and the rear, okay, put together. Okay, so typically what happens is that, like, for ease of first level analysis, people will take it as proportional to the weight of the vehicle, and we will write the rolling resistance force as some FR times W. Okay, FR being what is called as coefficient of rolling resistance. Okay, so this is a very simple formula which one can use. Then we have what is called as drop or pull. We may use it, we may not use it, because imagine that we want to pull a vehicle, right? Pull a trolley or a trailer along with our car, right? So we need to provide some force to do that, right? So that is what is called drop or pull. And FF and FR are what are called as the tractive forces provided by the powertrain at the front and the rear tire rod interfaces, respectively. Okay. Of course, if we have a front wheel driven vehicle, only FF will be there, FR will be 0. If you have a rear wheel driven vehicle, FF will be 0 and FR will be non-zero. Okay. So if you have an all-wheel or a four-wheel drive vehicle, we will have both FF and FR. Okay. So those are some important points. And finally, we can see that there is what is called as a D'Alembert's force. We follow this approach because we want to ensure that when we are driving this vehicle, right, and we want to essentially do the analysis, we treat the entire problem as a quasi-static problem. So what happens is that although the vehicle is accelerating, we take this force. W by G is nothing but M, right? The mass of the vehicle, MA, which is the inertia force. And then, like, we mark it as a pseudo force in the direction opposite to that of motion. And this is the D'Alembert's force. So the advantage is that, like, once we follow this approach, as we know in statics, we can just use very simple equations. The first equation can be a summation of all forces being equal to 0. We can analyze the problem as a quasi-static problem or a pseudo-static problem, and then write these three equations. Okay, and we can take the moments about point A to be 0. Okay, and the moments about point B to be 0. Okay, so we can write these three equations and we can get motion, equations of motion. All right, so that becomes very, very handy to do. All right, so once we do this, like, we are factoring in inertia. So we have factored in aerodynamic drag and so on, right? So these forces which the powertrain needs to overcome, right, are called as loads. Okay, also by some people. So if you encounter the word load in the context of a powertrain, people are referring to the resistance forces which the powertrain should overcome, right, while operating the vehicle. So these are typically the inertia force, the aerodynamic drag, the rolling resistance, and the grade resistance. And depending on the operation of the vehicle, each force may become more dominant than the other. See, for example, while starting from rest, inertia is dominant. While going on a grade or a hilly terrain, grade resistance will be dominant. When, let's say, we are going on a highway at constant speed, aerodynamic drag and rolling resistance would be dominant, okay, and so on. So really, it depends on what are the operating conditions of the vehicle that decide what is the dominant force, okay, as far as this particular the requirement from the powertrain is concerned. No, so like, that's something we need to keep in mind. Okay. So as we saw in the previous discussion, we use those three equations to write down the equation of motion. So this is equation 1, wherein we have summed all the forces and equated them to be 0. So consequently, the net tractive force is a sum of all these resistances. Okay, W by G is inertia. Okay, RA is rolling resistance. RA is aerodynamic drag. RR is rolling resistance. RG is grade resistance. And as I mentioned, some people will consider drop or pull. Okay, yeah, some may not consider. Okay, and if we take moments about point B, we will get an equation for WF. Okay, so this is like, we get a summation of the moments about point B to be 0. This equation we get when we sum all the moments about point A to be 0. Okay, so the derivation of the equation is very simple. I leave it as an exercise to all the participants to do. Okay, so you just need to look at the free body diagram and then, like, essentially what to say, write down the moment balance. So once we have this, we make some assumptions. We assume that the angle of the grade is small, so that cos theta s becomes close to 1, and we make some more assumptions. We get simple equations for WF and WR ultimately like this. Okay, so this algebra is once again pretty straightforward. I request all participants to try them. Okay, so here I want to now discuss the physics behind these equations. So what are WF and WR? WF and WR indicate the normal load on the front and the rear wheels respectively. So if you look at these two equations, you can see that there are two components on the right hand side of both equations. Okay, so I'm just marking those two components. The first component is the static component. Okay, so imagine that the vehicle is stationary. Okay, so then the load on the front wheel will be WL2 by L, and the load on the rear will be WL1 by L. Okay, so those are the static normal load components. But however, the vehicle is accelerating. So what happens is that when the vehicle is being accelerated, we can see that this H by L times F minus RR is taken from the front and transferred to the rear. Okay, so you can see that the same quantity is subtracted from the front expression or the expression for the front normal load and added to the expression for the rear normal. Okay, so this component is the dynamic load transfer, okay, which happens due to acceleration. I'm sure all of us would have felt it, right? So suppose if we are traveling in a car or a bus, right? Suddenly the driver accelerates, all of us tend to go back, right? So that's due to inertia, right? So all of us go backwards, and that is we are having some dynamic load transfer. Similarly, let's say we are going in a car or a bus and the driver does sudden braking or panic braking. In braking, the exactly reverse phenomena happens, right? So all of us will tend to go forward. So there is a dynamic transfer of normal load from the rear to the front, okay? So, but we are considering drive or acceleration. So that's why there's a normal dynamic load transfer from the front to the rear. And in fact, if you add the two expressions, you will see that you will get W, obviously, right? Because we can't, we should have the weight of the vehicle to remain constant, right? So you see that the second terms on the right hand side will cancel off, and you will get W by L times L2 plus L1. L2 plus L1 is anyway capital L, so we'll get W. Okay, so that's another way to check this. So I hope the physics behind these two expressions is clear. Okay, so now having looked at this, let's see what happens when we drive the front wheels and the rear wheels. Okay, so that's a discussion we are going to look at next. Now, let's say we have a front wheel drive, like what we call as FW. So this is the configuration in most passenger cars, right? So in most passenger cars, we drive the front wheels, wherein only the front wheels are provided the traction force. So in typical vehicle dynamics, what we do is that the maximum traction force is multiplied by a constant mu, and is obtained by multiplying the normal load with a constant mu. Okay, so this is a very simple approximation. This mu is called as traction coefficient. Okay, so it is the ratio of the longitudinal force to the normal load. We will not get into the details behind this, but this is what is called road traction coefficient or road friction coefficient or road adhesion coefficient. Okay, we should not confuse this mu with the general friction coefficient. See, for example, if you study friction, like we write friction force is mu times normal load, right? Although the expression seems similar, the physics is different. Okay, this mu here is the road traction coefficient. Okay, very simple way of getting an idea about what is the maximum force at the tire road. So let us say we drive only the front wheel, we are going to have only mu times WF, right? So now what we do is that, like, because WR is 0, so we plug in we substitute the expression for WF from the previous slide. In place of F, we use F max. And we can see F max is present in both the left-hand side and the right-hand side. We collect terms and then we simplify. Okay, so what this expression tells us is the maximum traction force that could be obtained from the front wheel drive for a particular road surface, right, and a particular vehicle. Okay, please keep this in. Okay, we'll revisit it shortly. Similar exercise for a rear wheel drive. Okay, so let's say we take a rear wheel drive. If you take a rear wheel drive, FF is 0, right? For a front wheel drive, FR was 0. So if you want to find the maximum tractive effort, now it becomes mu times WR, because we are not driving the front wheel. Okay, so then we substitute the expression for WR, and then in place of F we substitute Fmax. We do a similar process of collecting terms of Fmax and simplify. Okay, so this is what we have. All right. So the main changes, if you observe, right? If you look at the expression for the maximum tractive force of front wheel drive, here there is L2. Of course, here there is plus. FRH is typically very small. Okay, so let's neglect it for the time being. Okay, and importantly, in the denominator there is a plus. Okay, so if you look at the expression for the rear wheels, so you have an L1. Okay, for a front wheel drive we had L2 here. Okay, and then in the denominator we have a minus, but for the front wheel drive we have a plus. Okay, let's neglect FRH for the time, because numerically FRH is going to be very, very small, okay, relative to other parameters. Now let's look at the physics behind it, right? So why do we drive the front wheels in most passenger cars? If you look at most passenger cars, you know, the maximum load will be on the front wheels, right? The engine, transmission, everything is mounted on the front. So consequently, the center of gravity will be towards the front. And if the center of gravity is towards the front, we can see that L1 is going to be small, whereas L2 is going to be higher. Okay, please note that. Okay, in most passenger cars, L2 is going to be greater than L1. So coming to this expression, we can see that L2 appears here, right, in the front wheel drive expression. So obviously, if we drive the front wheel, we can get more out of the drive, okay, by using a front wheel drive. So that is the logic behind using the front wheel drive. Although there is a loss due to dynamic load transfer, okay, so the denominator becomes higher in a front wheel drive because due to dynamic load transfer. But the fact that the center of gravity is closer to the front of the vehicle compensates for. On the other hand, if we take, you know, like let's say a race car, right, or a truck, right, what happens is that typically in a race car or a truck, you know, like the load is more of the back or the rear wheels. So consequently, L1 will be greater than L2, okay, because now the center of gravity is more towards the rear. And added to the fact that there is benefit due to dynamic load transfer, more load is going to be transferred to the rear wheels during acceleration. So consequently, it makes sense to drive the rear wheels. Okay, so I hope this discussion helped us to understand, you know, like why we drive front wheels in some vehicle configurations and why we drive the rear wheels in some other vehicle configurations. Okay, so this is one of the reasons, okay, where we tend to balance out what is provided by the powertrain versus what is available in the tire road interface, okay, in terms of tractive performance to drive the vehicle. So I'm going to give a couple of exercises to you. As I mentioned, please derive those equations. And I am also giving you 3 vehicles whose specs or specifications are given here. Okay, I have given you all the parameters. And then like you just calculate these parameters, these numbers, right? Fmax for the front wheel drive and Fmax for the rear wheel drive. You observe by yourself, you know, which is greater, and then conclude which drive will you use. You know, will you use a front wheel drive or will you use a rear wheel drive? Okay, so please do this exercise. Okay, so it will be pretty instructive to do. All right. Okay, so having looked at all these configurations and some physics behind the vehicle tractive response, let's put everything together and let's try to size the electric powertrain. Okay, so now we are going to put all the information that we have learned till now, and then we will come up with very simple expressions to get what is called first level component sizing of an electric powertrain. As we discussed, an ideal powertrain is this, sorry about that. Yeah, so this is an ideal powertrain. Okay, so I'm just recapping what we already discussed. An ideal powertrain should provide constant power and consequently a hyperbolic torque, right? Because please remember, P can also be written as T times omega. So this implies that T equals P by omega. So there is a hyperbolic relationship between the torque and the speed, angular speed. Okay. So this is the ideal powertrain characteristics, but an IC engine provides a characteristics like this. So which is very far away from the ideal, right? So consequently, we need to ask ourselves, what can we do? And typically, more torque is required in an ideal powertrain at the beginning because we need to start the vehicle from rest and we need to overcome inertia. And even when we want to overcome grade resistance, which is also a very significant resistive force, typically most vehicles we will drive them at low speeds on hilly terrain, right? So that's why we require more drive torque at low speeds. Okay, but as we progress, as our speed increases, we don't require so much torque, to operate our vehicle. Okay, so that is why we essentially go in this manner. All right. So consequently, what happens is that if we follow this idea and we see that the IC engine is hardly going to get us right. So enough, what to say, or is not going to take us very close to the ideal powertrain characteristics, and that's why we use a multi-speed gearbox. Okay, so this is something we have already looked at. On the other hand, if you look at an electric motor, once again, these are the ideal characteristics of an electric motor, but then you can see that in an electric motor, point number one, it provides a reasonably high torques at low speeds and zero speeds. In fact, it provides very high torques. Okay, and the power keeps on increasing till what is called as a base speed. Okay, so after the base speed of a motor, the power remains constant, whereas then the torque starts falling like a hyperbola. So we can immediately observe that the electric motor has characteristics, which is more closely aligned to that of the ideal traction hyperbola, what is expected from a powertrain, than the IC engine. Okay, so consequently, this becomes very, very attractive, right, for us to use, because the electric motor is going to take us closer, to the ideal traction requirements, right? And we can use consequently, maybe one gear itself, right, in an electric powertrain rather than multiple gears. Okay, so this is a very attractive feature of an electric motor. Okay, so once again, and also the electric motor can give high torques at low speeds, so the ease of starting a vehicle, right, becomes easier, right? So it becomes much easier to operate, and consequently, we would have observed that electric vehicles also can accelerate faster, right? So due to this reason, so this makes it very attractive. So consequently, let's see how we can get a relationship. So suppose, let us say we want some traction force, right, F max from the vehicle. Okay, yeah. So what we do is that, this is the force of the wheel, and let's say this is the radius of the wheel. What we do is that, we multiply the force and the radius, we will get a torque, right? And then we divide the torque by the transmission ratio IG. Okay. Then we will get what should be the torque that should be provided by the prime mover. But of course, there is some energy loss in the entire system. So we divide that number by the transmission efficiency eta T. Then we will get what is the torque that the prime mover should provide. Okay. Yeah. So essentially, this expression gives us a relationship between the torque that should be provided by the prime mover and what is the force that will be delivered at the tire rod interface. Okay. So once again, we have a force at that longitudinal force at the tire rod interface. We multiply by a radius, we get a torque. We divide by the gear ratio, or the transmission ratio, and then we also divide by the transmission efficiency. That tells us what is the torque which the prime mover should provide to achieve that desired force. Now let's look at each criteria one by one. So now I go back to our very first question, right? We asked ourselves the question, what were our expectations from an electric powertrain, right? So one expectation was a maximum speed. So we saw that, look, one can specify that I want my vehicle to go at a maximum speed of, let's say, 120 kilometers per hour, right? So then what do we do? Okay, so if that is an expectation, what we do is the following, let us say we want our vehicle to go at a speed of Vmax. Okay, when the prime mover is going at a angular speed of omega max, we can use this expression to relate the maximum longitudinal speed and the corresponding motor speed. Okay, so this is a very simple expression. Okay, to relate the two variables. Now, when we are going at maximum longitudinal speeds, if you recall the loads, inertia, rolling resistance, grade resistance, and aerodynamic drag, inertia and grade resistance will not be major contributors. The reason being that when we are going at maximum longitudinal speed, we typically go at a cruising speed on a flat road, right, or a near flat road. So that's when we want to achieve maximum speed. So then in those conditions, the inertia force will be very small, and so will be the grade resistance. So the dominant forces will be the rolling resistance and aerodynamic drag. So what we do is that this is the force which the prime mover has to overcome. So we multiply with the maximum speed, divide by the powertrain efficiency, or the transmission efficiency, we get what is the power which the prime mover should provide. And we also essentially can calculate the torque, from the expression that we wrote down in the previous slide. Okay? So that's how we get. Suppose, let us say for some vehicle, we do this calculation and we get this number as 40 kilowatts. Okay, so let us see. Okay, so let us say I do some calculation, I get this number as 40 kilowatts. Okay. Now we go to the second specification, which is on gradability. Okay, so as we discussed, gradability is tan of theta s. Okay, theta s will be the the angle of the grade on which I want to travel, or the slope on which I want to travel. And when we are traveling on a grade, the main contribution will be mg sin theta s. Okay, we will consider what is called continuous gradability. That is, we are traveling on this grade at a constant speed, a low speed, but a constant speed. So compared to mg sin theta s, these two terms will be small, but typically we may include them, okay, to get an accurate estimate. But this is going to be the more dominant term. And consequently, we can calculate what should be the power which should be provided by the prime mover for satisfying gradability. And let's say we get this number as some 45 kilowatts. Okay, I'm just taking some example numbers. Okay, just to convey some answer. Okay, and a third requirement may be acceleration, right? As we discussed, let's say I want to go from 0 to 60 kilometers per hour in, let's say, 4 seconds. Then what I do, I use very simple equations to get a power rating for to meet the acceleration performance. This is nothing but integrating the basic equation of motion, F equals ma. Okay, so that's what we are doing. So if we use this equation, and let's say, I get the power rating as some 60 kilowatts. Okay, now we look at all the specifications in totality, right? So now the task before me is to choose a motor, right? I see that in order to satisfy maximum longitudinal speed, I need a motor of rating 40 kilowatts. To satisfy gradability, let's say I need 45 kilowatts. And to satisfy acceleration, I need 60 kilowatts. So what I do is that I choose the highest of the three. So if I choose a motor with a rating of 60 kilowatts, I can ensure all the three performance specifications, right, that are required of. Okay, so this way, we can use whatever we learn in fundamental dynamics, right, to do first cut analysis, right? And then we do detailed computer simulations to fine tune our powertrain designs based on drive cycle evaluation and so on, right? So that can be a follow-up stage. But see, this sort of analysis helps us to gain a handle over the physics of the problem, right, which is very important, for an engineer. So I leave you with another exercise where I have given you these specifications, okay, of a vehicle. So what I want you to do is you calculate the power which is required for cruising at 60 kilometers per hour. So for that, what I will do, I will go back and use this expression, okay, because when we are traveling at some constant speed, okay, although this expression was for Vmax, it holds for any constant speed, okay. You calculate what will be the corresponding power which is required to cruise at 60 kilometers. So the second question is the power required for climbing a grade of 15% at 16 kilometers per hour. If someone tells gradability is 15%, that means that tan of theta s is 0.15. Okay, so you need to take tan inverse of 0.15 to get theta s. Okay, so please be aware of that. So when someone says gradability should be 15%, tan theta s is 0.15. Okay, so that's how you should interpret it. So now please go back to the formula which we had for gradability, substitute it here, and then get the power, okay, which is required for meeting the gradability. Then the transmission ratio for achieving a maximum vehicle speed of 90 kilometers per hour at a motor speed of 12,000 RPM. What you do is like you go back and look at this expression. Okay, you just substitute, and then you need to find IG because that is what's okay. Yeah. So please try out these exercises so that you will essentially gain some insight behind these equations, and you will also have a feel for the numbers, right? Which is also very important. Okay. So let me stop here. This is what I have to convey to you today. In summary, we looked at some basic questions related to vehicle power, electric powertrains, and powertrains in general. From the perspective of vehicle dynamics, we asked ourselves, what are the requirements of a powertrain, and what are the different configurations of electrified vehicles, and we did some simple analysis to get the relationships between various quantities involved, and then we use them to size electrified powertrains. Okay, so thank you for your attention. I am open to questions now.
Dear participants, you may ask the questions in the chat box or directly from the sir.
So, yeah, I think we're getting some questions in the chat box. Yes, of course, I will share the slides with to Dr. Pali, and he can share it with all of you. And traction force and friction force, same or different? What is the difference? See, please note that in the context of vehicle dynamics, we use the term traction force. See, friction force is typically having a negative connotation. Okay, so it is a resistive force. We are essentially introduced by friction by considering a block which is sliding on a surface, and then the resistance to its motion is some mu times W, right? So where mu is the friction coefficient and W is the normal load. But in the context of vehicle dynamics, this mu is the traction coefficient. Although it is called friction coefficient alternatively, the context is different, because here we are looking at propelling a vehicle, right? So this is no longer a resistive force, but rather it is indicative of the capacity of the tire rod interface to propel a vehicle forward. Okay, so in that context, we use the term traction force. Okay, although the term traction coefficient and friction coefficient are used interchangeably to represent the same parameter mu, as I explained on the slide. Okay, next question is gearbox required for EV? See, typically most EVs, since the electric motors go very close to the ideal traction hyperbola, we can in fact operate with one gear itself, right? Some electric vehicles may have a couple of gears for other reasons. Okay, so they may have other performance requirements for which there may be 2 gears, but the number of gears is certainly much lower than what is required for an internal combustion engine. Like most electric vehicles can run on 1 gear, right? Once again, it depends on the requirements. Okay, this is only a generic state. Okay, so the gear unit itself will be only 1 gear. Okay? That makes the even the powertrain design much simpler. So yeah. So in some of EV powertrain, they're using transmission. Yes. So as I mentioned, there may be some designs in which there may be multiple or multi-speed gears which are used, right? But there the performance requirements may be different, right? So the reason why they may use multi-speed gears is perhaps like they want to extend the speeds, right, by having 2 gears, like, and they want high torques at in the low speed regions and so on, right? So we may want to balance out different requirements, right? So essentially they may have multi-speed gearboxes, but once again, like maybe 2, that's it. What are the benefits in driving 4-wheel driven car? Okay, so see, if you look at once again 4-wheel drive and 2-wheel drive, okay, see, once again it depends on what we expect, okay? Even irrespective of the type of powertrain, right? So see, the question is ultimately we want some acceleration, some speed, some gradability, right? It's a matter of how we get the force. Now, let us say you tell me that please design a vehicle such that I need to deliver a force of 100 newtons at the limit, right? So I'm taking a round number of 100 newtons, okay, just for the sake of discussion. So it's the designer's choice whether they get all the 100 newtons from the rear wheels, all the 100 newtons from the front wheels, or distribute them between the front and the rear wheels. So once again, like it really depends on the type of vehicle. And but if you look at off-terrain vehicles like 4-wheel driven vehicles, right? So if let's say front wheels get stuck in mud, like the rear wheels can still drive the vehicle forward. But then if you have only a front wheel driven vehicle or rear wheel driven vehicle, one limitation is that, like, let's say we have a front wheel driven car and our front driven wheels get stuck in a pothole full of mud. What will happen? We would have seen that we will press the accelerator, but then the wheels will keep on spinning, right? Because there is not enough traction. So we may get stuck. So this is one reason why, if you look at all these off-road vehicles, right, or what are called all-terrain vehicles, will typically go for a 4-wheel drive. Of course, the complexity increases, but with electric vehicles, there are some also flexibilities that we get, right? We can use what are called in-hub motors to drive the wheels directly and so on, right? So there are various configurations that are possible, right? So we get more flexibility with EVs and so on. So people are exploring all possible configurations. But once again, we need to ask ourselves the question, what is it that I want, right, from that particular vehicle design? So then we essentially, okay. So what difference will be there in the calculation for 2-wheelers? So first cut thought process, as far as the discussion in this talk is concerned, not much, because the resistances would be similar. But 2-wheelers, the dynamics is completely different. So we may need to be a bit careful, okay? So going forward, like I'm using them for advanced analysis. Okay, so let me qualify the answer very, very carefully. That is, for the purpose of this talk, the context of this talk, the scope of this talk, the whatever analysis we used is transferable for 2-wheeler analysis also with appropriate modifications. Okay, yeah. Okay, where we will get in-depth knowledge about vehicle performance. There are a few standard textbooks about automobile engineering and vehicle dynamics. Perhaps I will share with Dr. Pali, and then you can refer to them. Okay. One other question is, reverse speed same as forward speed in electric vehicles? If yes, how? Okay. So what is the meaning of that? Because when you want to travel in reverse gear, we need to engage a different gear, right? So obviously the reverse gear, when we engage the reverse gear, the speed of the wheels will be reduced a lot, right? So typically, So once again, it's a design aspect. I think it is designed to be different. Like if you look at general transmission, also if you look at the reverse gear, we introduce an idler gear, right? So to change the direction of rotation of the wheels, correct? And typically, we want to drive it at lower speeds, right? So that like we can control the vehicle while going in reverse motion. Okay, so
Thank you, sir. I think all participants have inquired all the possible queries. So thank you, Professor. I am highly delighted and I am very thankful on behalf of the NIT Srinagar, on my personal behalf, for your insightful and very knowledgeable lecture and expert talk. So, and I think all queries from the participant is over. So thank you for the joining and to give the expert talk in the FDP.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for your invitation and all the best with this program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah,
thank
good
you.
Day. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. And dear participants, we have the another common inaugural through the AICT site. So I will sharing one link. So you can join this, or otherwise I have already shared this link in the chat box. And as well as I have this shared this link in your WhatsApp group also. So you can join this common inaugural, which is organized by the AICT. There is the one expert, that is the Sukhvinder Ahuja, and CEO and founder of Cadence Design Solutions India, and chief guest of honor is our AICT chairman, Professor Anil Sastbudde. So you are requested, please you may join this common inaugural through the YouTube link, and we will meet again 2 p.m. for the next technical session, that is by the Dr. TK Vera, and you may join that technical session with the help of the shared link that is already available in your email or your WhatsApp group. So any query and you may ask, otherwise we will see in the next technical session. Okay, thank you all.